And now, here's your host.
Welcome back to the program. Zev Brenner with us once again. He's been with us many times over the years. Rabbi Abraham Cooper is Associate Dean and Director of the Global Social Action for the Simon Wiesenthal Center, a leading Jewish human rights organization with more than 400,000 family members. He recently was in Saudi Arabia as part of the U.S. Religious Freedom Commission, where he's co-chair, and he was asked to remove his yarmulke. So the delegation removed itself from Saudi Arabia. Rabbi Cooper, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Shavua Tov, Zev. How are you?
Shavua Tov, how are you? Welcome to the program. Thank you for being here with us. So tell us what brought you to Saudi Arabia in the first place.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm the chairman for this year in any event of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. It's mandated by U.S. Congress. It has 9 commissioners, 3 from the president and 2 each from the Republican and Democratic leadership of the Senate and House. We're mandated to operate in a bipartisan fashion, and we're looking at 20, specifically seen through the lens of freedom of religion. And so Saudi Arabia is one of those countries. And about, I guess it's now 10 days ago, we were scheduled for a 3-day visit. The first day went, I think, extremely well, a very high level. It involved also the U.S. Embassy. And on the first evening, we were guests, I guess, of the Foreign Ministry in part of Riyadh. That's the historic, ancient part. The UNESCO site. It's a beautiful location. We went through about a third of the tour, and I received a phone call from someone, I guess, from the Foreign Ministry, who said, we have laws here in Saudi Arabia that don't allow the public display, religious display of religious items from other religions. So respectfully, I'd like to ask you to remove your kippah. And I said, are you absolutely sure you're asking me to do this? He said, yes. Well, I'll just say 2 things. Number one, it's like asking someone in Saudi Arabia to remove their hijab. And number 2, 50 years ago, I spent a month in the Soviet Union. I didn't take my kippah off for them, and I don't plan to take it off for you. So maybe you should check to make sure that you want me, because I'm here as the chair of the United States Commission sent by the U.S. government on international religious freedom.
Imagine, you're here to protect religious freedom, and they're telling you to get rid of yours.
Right. So he came back on the phone about 5 minutes later. Very politely, neither of us raised our voices, and he said, well, I checked, and you have to leave the premises. And if you don't, you'll be escorted out. So I said, well, okay. I understand what you're saying. So I will leave the premises, and I will be leaving Saudi Arabia. I also turned to my vice chair, who's an African-American clergyman from New York, Fred Davey. And I said, look, I'm going to be leaving, but for you and the other people in delegation, if you want to go through with the rest of the meetings, I understand it. And he said, absolutely not. I absolutely will be leaving with you. And so very quickly, our entire commission, 5 people, the delegation, made the decision to leave. And the next evening, we left. And we obviously we've spoken to some of the officials. I met with the deputy foreign minister and the ministry of that takes care of these kinds of issues. They requested that I explained to them why not. And actually, on the drive back to the hotel, I also received a call from the Saudi ambassador to the United States in Washington. And I explained the situation to her, and she basically said she understood why I was doing it, and added that perhaps it was best that it happened to someone like me, because it was important not to sweep such incidents under the rug. And that was, I guess, now about a week ago. And there was a statement posted by the Saudi embassy a few days ago saying that I will be invited back to finish my visit. I look forward to that. And I will say that I do not believe that this call to remove my kippah came from MBS. I think it came from other sources. You know, Saudi Arabia right now is going through massive changes. The women are out from behind, behind the veil, literally. We are meeting with the president and the staff of the Human Rights Commission in Saudi Arabia. It was a brilliant woman. We had a 2-hour meeting with her. So there are massive changes taking place. And as you and I both know, you've spoken about it to many experts over decades. It was MBS that decided to put a stop to Wahhabism, but that doesn't happen by a light switch. It's going to take a lot of years. I'm close with Dr. Muhammad Ali Sa, the head of the World Muslim League, but clearly there are a lot of people who are upset about some of these changes. And Zev, look, here's the bottom line. My guess is that many other people have been asked to remove their kippah in public. Maybe I was the first guy to say no.
Now, did you ever consider not leaving and having an international scene where they take you out or arrest you? Was that part of your thinking?
No, I mean, you know that I grew up in New York, and I think my brother Barry and sister Rifki are listening right now. But no, this was not. I was representing the United States of America, but I'm also who I am. And at no time you didn't raise any voices. There was no need to make any threats.
It's not a
But I
threat.
just
You can
wanted.
say, listen, I'm here. If you don't like my wearing a yarmulke, I'm not budging from the spot. And they would have had to make a scene by moving you out or arresting you, in which case it would have gotten even more attention without you doing a thing, except just standing there. That was my question to you.
So yeah, so the truth is, I was not so much interested in making a scene. I'm interested in making a statement. And remember also, I've been involved with UAE since 2009 and Bahrain since 2017. The real goal here is to what's going on now, for example, in Dubai. Israelis get off a plane. Half of them are wearing kippot. Nobody cares. Nobody notices. Normalizing contact between Jews and our cousins, the Arabs, globally. I'm not talking right now about what's going on in the Holy in Eretz Israel, but more broadly, the idea is to try to normalize these relationships, to try to drain the swamp to the extent that we can of anti-Semitism. And that's really my goal. And I think also it was, to me anyway, clear. This was not a move that came from MBS. I think this is a move that came from people who don't want to see these kinds of changes. So by making a scene and, being on your show 2 weeks in a row, that really didn't make any sense to me. What made sense is make your point, do it with dignity. Kol hakavod to my non-Jewish colleague in 30 seconds who said, I'm out of here with you. This is not right. And I hope to be able to go back and finish my visit. Hopefully, well, between Ramadan and Pesach, I may have to wait a while, but I'll work on it pretty aggressively.
Now, up until October 7th, Saudi Arabia was in the process of normalizing relations with Israel. October 7th changed everything, or did it when you were there? You still sense that's still on track? They're waiting for this Hamas war to end. What was your sense while you were there?
I think there are two things. Number one, when you have Qatar's Al Jazeera, which is a 24/7 sewer when it comes to the Jewish people in Israel, and even some of the media folks who backed the Abraham Accords, there's no question that right now it's been damaged, it's on hold. We know what we have to do as Klal Yisrael. They don't like seeing it. Not deep sympathy for the Palestinians, but to see this day in and day out, and especially now during Ramadan, where everyone looks at the TV together once they break their fast, it's not a great time. But having said that, the fundamentals for Saudi Arabia are pretty clear. Number one, despite their discussions, Iran remains an existential threat. Number two, they like to make money. They're trying to move also beyond just the oil into a whole new sphere. And that means that Israeli know-how, their startup mentality, etc., are attractive to them. So the fundamentals for Saudi Arabia and Israel moving forward are there, but it's not necessarily going to be in a straight line. And I know a lot of people said, well, do you think this happened because of Gaza? And actually, I think not. I think this has to do more with the internal changes and maybe me'achareha pargod, as we say, behind the scenes, continuing unease on the part of a lot of people who don't like MBS's so-called 2030 vision. But I'll tell you one thing, Zeb. I did the math, and in 2030, I'm going to be 80 years old. I'm not going to wait till 2030 for that normalization for as long as I can, and having this amazing opportunity as an American citizen to help move the normalization with the Arab world and elsewhere forward. I think that's what having this option and opportunity, I'm going to pursue it very aggressively.
Now, while you were there, were there protests against Israel among the native Saudi Arabians? Was there unrest because of it? I know some Arab countries had demonstrations. From your sense, what was it like in Saudi Arabia?
I did not see any indication about that kind of, if you will, what the street has to say. But again, also, Saudi Arabia is kind of unique. They host people from about 100 countries, and there's also that X factor that we don't necessarily relate to. But as custodians of the holy sites, they have Muslims coming in from what? Over 100 countries on a regular basis. So I wouldn't say it's so much cosmopolitan, but I think it's much more open. I think Saudi Arabia sees itself as a custodian on a lot of levels. I don't know that before October 7th that the Palestinian issue was top on their list, but also remember, even though many of us don't see it as realistic, they came out already I think in 2002, saying that, we back a two-state solution, we do X, Y, and Z. And actually, my former boss, Rabbi Heyer, and I met going back 30 years ago with Prince Bandar when he was the ambassador in the United States during George H.W. Bush. And, he talked about relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. But I think the context until now has basically been that, Saudi Arabia and other nations in the Gulf always relied on that nuclear umbrella that the United States provided. Right now, what's happened in the course of these last couple of years under the current administration, no one's quite sure what the United States is really prepared to do. So it's complicated, but the fundamentals of what brought about the Abraham Accord, I think, are still intact. And as long as they are, please God, hopefully in the near future, this will take off, and especially because Saudi Arabia is the guardian of the religious sites. If they were to make peace with Israel, it would have implications not only in the Arab world, but as far away as Indonesia.
By the way, you mentioned former head of the Wiesenthal Center, Rabbi Marvin Heyer. I neglected to ask you, there's been a major change at the Wiesenthal Center. What's going on at the top?
Well, we have a new CEO. His name is Jim Burke, but there are a lot of other moving parts. It's Rabbi Heyer, Baruch Hashem, just celebrated his 85th birthday this week. I think physically he's in better shape than I am. I saw him jogging between Mincha and Ma'ariv in the neighborhood. It's, of course, a huge change. It was his vision that brought us to where we are. And it's a transition time for the center. My main work is really in two fields: fighting anti-Semitism on the one hand, and looking for normals around the world on the other. And that hopefully will continue for a while longer.
So we're going to break, but before I do so, when I spoke with former Assemblyman Dov Hikind, one of the things that intrigues me is that all these pro-Hamas demonstrations around the United States, while it seems spontaneous, there is an organizer behind it, and there's big dollars behind it. Is the Wiesenthal Center any group that's investigating the money trail? Because yes, we should be more activists, no question about that. But part of the thing is if we can trace the money trail and show that the fact that it's being organized and orchestrated, that I think will be a big thing.
Well, a lot of people bring up the name of Qatar for obvious reasons, and we're in touch with some of the people who are looking at that money trail. That's not only universities, but in all the way down to K through 12. What we've done, I don't know if you've seen in the last few days, or whether or not it's even, whether it's, false flag or trying to use psychological warfare, but there are indications that you have Antifa moving into some of these events and some of these protests. And Antifa is known for one thing, violence. And they're very well coordinated, trained, and we know what they did to places like Portland, et cetera, during pretty much around COVID. We've called on Christopher Wray to start treating all of these incidents, including those that block access to highways, closing of streets, threats that are made. This isn't just a matter of hate crimes. It could be a matter of domestic terrorism. And honestly, with the greatest respect to all the Jewish groups, I think that's beyond our pay scale, even collectively, although we should be trying harder. But we need the Justice Department and the FBI to do their job, to step it up on a whole nother level. And I would also say,
did Christopher Wray get back to you? Did he have to get back to you?
He has not. We have put in also a request for this coming week to have a Zoom call with agents in charge in one of the largest cities of the United States. We're going to pursue it. And I think for anyone who's hearing, my voice tonight, I think it'd really be important. This shouldn't just be a Wiesenthal Center initiative. This is a very important issue, as there's no indication yet of a cooling of the attacks against our community, whether it's what was it, last Sunday, where they had to cancel a real estate fair in Flatbush.
In Flatbush, I believe it was Wednesday, a couple of days ago. Yes.
So a couple of days ago. So you see, and up in Canada, we're now seeing protests about genocide in front of schools. And wherever, whether it's the UK or Canada or the streets of our own cities, wherever they see any weakness or hesitation on the part of elected officials, of politicians, of police, etc., they step up their game another notch and another notch. So we have to step up ours. We have to politely demand that those people who are there to keep all Americans safe do so, and whether they're Democrats or Republicans, no matter who's the president, moving forward, if we don't get that kind of involvement and reassurance, it's going to be even a tougher time for Klal Yisrael here in the diaspora.
Our guest is Rabbi Abraham Cooper. He is the Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action Agenda for the Simon Wiesenthal Center. He recently was in Saudi Arabia, where they asked him to remove his yarmulke, so he removed himself. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned. And when we come back, we'll take some of your phone calls. 212-769-1925. 212-769-1925. You want to email. Email is a wonderful way to get some of your questions answered. I see some of them coming in already. ZevetTalkLineNetwork.com. ZevetTalkLineNetwork.com. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. And just the program of today is Sunday. We're also on WOR 710 on the AM dial at 9 p.m. Also WNEW 102.7 FM HD3. And our guest is, aside from Gabe Geller of Cat and Wine on Purim, What to Drink for Purim, Professor Abraham Winter joins us, and he knows statistics, and he's going to prove statistically why Hamas's numbers don't add up as far as how many are killed, and they claim mostly women and children. And scientifically, he has shown this to be a lie. Numbers aren't supposed to lie, but he's proved that it is lying. So you don't want to miss that. Today, Sunday, also at TalkLineNetwork.com. We're going to be right back. Don't go away. Stay tuned.
This Purim, support Israel with a taste of the Holy Land. Men and women just love Evan Zahav's super smooth and soft arak, the Israeli rum. The Evan Zahav Brandy VSOP in a special gift box and the premium Evan Zahav Goldstone Grand Reserve Brandy represents superb Israeli distilling traditions and the finest natural spirits in oak barrels ever made, and makes for a great Shalach Manas gift. Jewish women work exceptionally hard this time of year and are the anchor of the home. What better way to show appreciation than with these exceptional drinks from Israel? If you're looking for other great choices for Purim, consider Etienne Francais VSOP Armagnac with subtle hints of spices, Etienne Francais VSOP Cognac, aged for a minimum of 4 years in oak casks, or Etienne Francais XO Cognac, aged for a minimum of 10 years in oak casks. The Cumba Chileana collections are the best kosher mevushal wines from Chile. It's a big hit and has become a favorite wine for special occasions. Its taste is full and steady with notes of blueberry, blackberry, and red currant. You'll also love the wild goat mevushal wines from Argentina, all kosher for Pesach and year-round. A happy Purim from Doina Limited, importer of the finest kosher wines, cognacs, and brandy.
In a place where tradition meets luxury. The Sleepy Hollow Hotel in Terrytown, newly renovated, featuring its stunning exterior, beautiful rooms, and an inviting lobby, a stunning pool, and a spa, plus a shul and a mikveh right outside. And executive host is Menachem Weinstock. Savor the flavors of Pesach with Chef Shimmy. Fresh food that will delight your senses. Zoo rides, caricature arts, concert, Yom Tov show, carnival games, xylophone play. 201-777-0212.
Order in the court! Order in the court!
Did anybody call for a lawyer? Hey, I'm Leah D.
And I'm Zaki Tamir, and we host Let's Lawyer Up.
Zaki, let's tell our listeners the great news.
Hey guys, Let's Lawyer Up is moving to Saturday night. That's right, Saturday night from 10:30 to 11 p.m. right here on WSNR 620 AM.
And WNEW 102.7 FM, HD3. Hey, Zev.
Yes, Lady.
Are you ready for Let's Lawyer Up to move to Saturday night?
You bet I am.
So get ready for Let's Lawyer Up. Hey, Zaki, anybody call for a lawyer?
Saturday night, 10:30 right here. Let's Lawyer Up. Be there.
Hi, New York. This is Michael, founder of My First Pistol, your premier firearm consultants in the Big Apple. With crime and anti-Semitism on the rise, ensuring your safety and the safety of your family has never been more crucial. And that's where exercising your Second Amendment rights come into play. Navigating the complexities of acquiring a legal firearm in New York City can be cumbersome and daunting, but fear not. My First Pistol is here to streamline the process for you. We're dedicated to guiding you smoothly from A to Z, making sure you feel supported every step of the way. We proudly serve all 5 boroughs in the Long Island area, making sure everyone has access to our expert guidance. To get started, you need to be over 21, have no felony convictions, and a legal resident of New York City. Looking for a concealed carry license, home premise, or a rifle shotgun license, we've got you covered. Plus, with our money-back guarantee, your satisfaction is our top priority. Don't let the bureaucratic hurdles keep you from protecting your loved ones. Visit us at myfirstpistol.com or give us a call or text 347-559-7052. That's 347-559-7052. Let's embark on this journey together, because in New York City, being prepared is not just wise, it's essential. Thanks for listening, New York. I'm Michael, ready to empower you at My First Pistol. Never again is now.
Please welcome the 110th mayor of the great city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams.
One of my favorite radio shows. Always good speaking with you, Zev. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're listening to Talk Line with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, on the air since 1981.
And now, here's your host.
And we're back. Our guest is Rabbi Abraham Cooper. He is the Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action Agenda for the Simon Wiesenthal Center based in Los Angeles. Let's take an email for you, Rabbi Cooper. Let's see. Joy in Manhattan writes, Shavua Tov, did any other members of the delegation have on religious garb?
No, the other members of the delegation, including the vice chair, who was a pastor, he wasn't wearing a collar at that time. So I was the only one.
Now, was the ban just on headgear when what they told you had to leave, or any religious garb that's not Islamic would have been a problem?
What I was told by this gentleman on the phone was that there's a rule that anyone bearing religious symbols of any other faith in public would have to remove it. It's simply not allowed under the law in Saudi Arabia,
So in other words,
according to what he said.
right, so according to that, if the gentleman with you who is a pastor was wearing a cross, that would not have been permitted either.
That is apparently correct, although it's not sure that is currently the rules. So one of the reasons to go back is obviously to want to speak to people in charge. I said, I'm a little bit used to this. As I said, my first visit, for example, to Dubai was before the windows were put in the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. It took 7.5 minutes in the workman's elevator to get to the top. Or in Bahrain, it's in every society there. The whole idea of normalizing relationship with Jews, each place is different, but the main thing is really psychological. And that is, the more you have those connections and contacts, the simpler it becomes for the people in charge to make the necessary change.
Now, how do you know if you go back, that's the same individual, somebody else will do it again if they're in conflict with the modernization of the kingdom?
I would just answer it this way. I was in the Soviet Union with my lifelong friend, David Konigsberg, in September 1972. For those of you born in the 21st century, or ever heard of someone named Richard Nixon, it was a couple of weeks before he was reelected. That's how far back we're talking. But one thing I learned from the Soviet Union, there were no accidents in the Soviet Union. If something happened to you, it was meant to be. Right now, when we talk about social issues, apparently so, but except the difference is that if you want to leave, they will show you there's the door, you can still get out. But I think today the situation in Saudi Arabia, to put everything in context, who's 39 years old, which means he could be around a very long time. He's trying to make a series of massive changes in many different directions. Now, specifically on interaction and also what it is that's taught, the Muslim World League is an extremely important global Muslim entity, funded, I think, primarily by Saudi Arabia. And starting about 5 years ago, who's the former justice minister of Saudi Arabia, was appointed by MBS to essentially turn that oil tanker around 180 degrees. I met with him back, I guess, 5.5 years ago, and the place where people usually meet the first time for supposedly secret talks, although it's one way of announcing it, was at a prominent hotel in Georgetown. We spoke for 4 hours. Since then, you can ask the next time you have any of the major leaders on, whether it's Malcolm, etc. He's made the rounds. He's made himself available. He's been back to New York, I think, a couple of times. And there are changes afoot there. There's no question. And very important for us also in terms of, making shit through their system in Saudi Arabia no longer have that peace that includes Jew hatred. So we're in I think, a tipping point in a lot of different ways, looking at a place like Saudi Arabia. And obviously,
Rabbi Abraham Cooper is our guest from the Wiesenthal Center. He just was gotten back from Saudi Arabia, where he was told to remove his yarmulke, and instead of removing his yarmulke, his whole delegation removed itself from Saudi Arabia, went back home, and as you heard, he is planning to go back again, and this time will be allowed to wear a yarmulke, and we're going to ask him if maybe he should wear a bigger one than he wore last time, but certainly it's nice to see that. We're going to be right back. We're going to continue a conversation with Rabbi Abraham Cooper, so don't go away. Stay tuned, and if you want to continue sending us your email, zev@talklinenetwork.com, zev@talklinenetwork.com, or you can call us at 212-769-1925, 212-769-1925. And the reminder that we broadcast 24 hours a day, talklinenetwork.com, talklinenetwork.com. Also, WNEW 102.7 FM HD3, America's only Jewish FM HD channel. Rabbi Abraham Cooper is back with us, and I was going to read an email. One of our listeners writes that he's seen stores where some of the Muslims are wearing a black skull cap. So if they're wearing a skull cap, so he doesn't understand why you had a difficulty. They do wear skull caps. He's right.
Yeah. Actually, I think you know me pretty well. I don't wear a black hat, but actually I have a couple of nice knitted. Yeah, but it was a black kippah sruga, and honestly, especially in the evening when we were out, it would be. I don't think anybody would notice, but more importantly, was during the daylight hours. You know, wherever we were. They've got, I think, over 35% of their population is 30 or under. Everybody's on their iPhone. It's society in flux. I don't know how many people really care anymore, but it is clear from the incident that there are enough people still in positions of responsibility who don't like the changes that are being considered. That is clear. So I think, honestly, Zeb, I don't mean to disparage our road, but the only person whose neck sort of turned around when they passed by me was somebody who was wearing a Yankees baseball cap, which meant to me, oh, it must be another Yid who thinks by wearing a baseball cap, nobody knows that he's Jewish. And he's looking at me and says, hey, wait a second, there's a guy with the yarmulke. What am I doing here?
I wanted, in the few moments we have remaining, I wanted to change gears. I wanted to play what Jonathan Glazer said at the Oscars attacking his Judaism in Israel. Here,
choices were made to reflect and confront us in the present, not to say, look what they did then, rather look what we do now. Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. It shaped all of our past and present. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. Whether the victims of October the whether the victims of October the 7th in Israel or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all are victims of this dehumanization. How do we resist? Alexandra Bistron Kaladziechek, the girl who glows in the film as she did in life, chose to. I dedicate this to her memory and her resistance. Thank you.
What bothers me more, Rabbi Cooper, and Rabbi Cooper, we're speaking with him, is that I just played for you what happened at the Oscars, where you had this Jew, supposedly Jew, who's ashamed of his Judaism, and he talks about the Holocaust and just equates Jews with being the Nazis today, basically speaking, which is a phrase we have from some of the anti-Semites. So, Rabbi Cooper, you heard Jonathan Glazer. What bothered me even more than his remarks is the applause, the enthusiastic, lustful applause from the audience. To me, that was even more shocking than what he had to say. What's going on?
Well, actually, what he had is a desecration of the memory of the victims of the Shoah. And, you know, he didn't clear what he wrote with the other people who were standing on stage. But I understand that the director, a fellow named Cohen, said, you know, it took them a project, whatever it was, 10 years to get completed. He destroyed in 30 seconds. So to get up there, having used the Shoah, to be able to, an important film where he goes up there and then desecrates their memory and insults every other Jew. But more importantly, for him and for those people who clapped, who are Jewish at the Oscars, who clapped for him, they forget a fundamental about what the Nazis' approach and the Hamas's approach is to the Jewish people. They don't care how much you may grovel so that you'll, be the last one to be taken in. They're going to come after you if you're a Jew. And what this man did is beyond disgusting. But you might say, and especially as someone who comes from the UK, right now where anti-Semitism is running rampant, where the police are not doing their job, we're allowing the Jews to twist in the wind. It's just really beneath contempt. And it's a shame because the book upon which it's based from 20 years ago talks about Rudolf Hess and his family living literally right outside the gate while they were mass murdering our loved ones, is an important book. And I imagine that the director, they put together a powerful film, but he forever has now desecrated their memory and made a mockery of his statement, makes a mockery of his own film.
Here's an email from AI in Lower East Side of Manhattan. Great show as usual. I don't understand why couldn't your guest simply put on a hat, cap, or the like? Hey, I Baruch Hashem been to all 50 states, all 10 Canadian provinces, and 40 countries worldwide. I simply put on a cap if it was safer to do so. Thanks so much for your great show.
Right. So someone else who I respect a lot, who actually did a Zoom with me before I left, someone I really deeply respect, asked me to, please stay. The level of hatred and you'll gain so many points, et cetera, et cetera. And I said only half kiddingly, I said, you know what? You're from Manhattan, but I'm from Flatbush and I'm leaving. I think what's important for it's a fair question because you can't apply this to every situation in life. But I think what's important here is let's look back and see what the reaction was to an African American Presbyterian pastor who didn't have to leave, but as vice chair of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, without hesitation said, I'm out of here too. So this is a matter of fundamental derech eretz. And honestly, if I wasn't present as a representative of the United States and of all citizens, I think they just would have been happy to throw me out immediately from the country. But upon reflection, whoever at the end of the day is really in charge here, I think they understood, well, we're trying to influence them l'tovah to get a more positive annual report out of USERF about Saudi Arabia. And we just told the head of that commission to take off his yarmulke. So yes, maybe in other circumstances, in other places, or maybe even in a place like that, I would have perhaps put my cap back on. But I really think when you have a society that's going through massive change, where they're breaking all sorts of taboos, where they've already indicated to us by virtue of the Muslim World League and others that they're trying to move society in another direction. I'm hoping that it turns out to be a teaching moment. I hope I'll get back there. I don't have the arrogance to think that it's going to make such a huge difference. But I'll also say one other thing to the people who are listening, because in a couple of days we're going to have Purim. And it's not just a teaching moment for Saudi Arabia. Maybe it's a teaching moment for our Jewish kids and grandchildren as well. Not to tell them in every situation, discuss it. I think it's worthwhile finding out what the parameters should be. But if nothing less, my belief is respect is a two-way street. And in this case, I felt the best way to stand for what's best of America, let alone in terms of our own traditions, was to politely say, I'm out.
By the way, we spoke earlier about the Israel real estate show that was canceled in Flatbush. Were you upset that it was canceled? Do you believe it should have gone on because it sends the wrong signal? Or do you understand the reason why? Because they felt it was safety for the children in the neighborhood. That's why it was canceled.
You know what? It's difficult to be a Monday morning quarterback. I don't know enough about the particulars or who in the end made the decision, whether it was the police or Rosh Yeshiva or the rabbi from the synagogue or the people who came. All I know is that our experience with these menuvalim that are coming after our people is every time we step back, they're going to come back even stronger. But if there's a matter where you had immediate concern about the well-being of children and members and the family members, I think that's something very seriously that has to be taken into consideration. But overall, with what it is that we're dealing with, this global campaign, the embrace of the Hamas narrative on our campuses and now on our streets, you can see it continues to sort of grow in a certain direction. Maybe it is time for, on the grassroots level, people in Flatbush, people in Manhattan, people in Westchester, the tri-state area, to sit down and go over what are we going to do if and when A, B, and C happens here. And not only can it happen locally, it is happening locally. So I take it as a wake-up call. I'm not going to condemn anybody the morning after. It's obviously very, very frustrating when you work very hard to set something up and then you're not able to fulfill that particular task. It's not simple and it's not easy. And those decisions have to be made fully informed, but it also means that we need to learn from each incident. And the next time we do something, to take proactive measures to make sure that we can't be bullied. Because what they want to do is to bully us, purge us, erase us, remove us from the public domain. And we have to be smart about this. We need more allies and more friends. I would just say, by the way, one thing that's going out on Monday, we're sending out a letter to our Haitian friends in New York, as well as the Jewish leadership. What's going on in Haiti right now is beyond words. We need a lot of friends and allies, and it happens that a lot of the Haitian leaders in New York did speak out after October 7th. So we have to, I think, sort of recalibrate the way we look at what's going on around us. We need the maximum number of friends. It's a good time to make those friendships is when you don't have a crisis. But I think that's part of the approach that we need to take moving forward, is that we need to have our neighbors understand what we're up against and to try to win them over to our side.
So just as we're closing out, you mentioned Antifa. So based on that, do you predict or see that some of these Hamas demonstrations will become even more violent than they are right now because of this new factor?
Well, we don't know if it's real or not, or someone's just having fun by just putting up some AI stuff or watching to see how the reaction would be.
Well, how'd you get wind of it? On what basis do you have that information?
It was posted publicly online in a local community setting. So I don't know, and I'm lo navi anochi v'lo ben navi, not in the prophecy business. But one thing we do know for sure, when you think about it from the mindset of Antifa, they don't really care about Hamas, Gaza, or anything else. They're looking to weaken our democracy at every opportunity. And if our community be roadkill for where they want to go, they would do so without hesitation. So in order to answer your question, we need the help of the intelligence units of the local PDs, and we need the involvement of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They're the pros. They're in a position to answer, but it's clear that when it comes to Antifa, especially when they first were making the attacks, that there had to be some political decisions not to go after them hard. Now everyone knows what Antifa stands for. If they come into the factor, it's a game changer.
Certainly is. What are some of your biggest challenges these days, aside from the Hamas, and I call them Hamas rallies? They're not pro-Palestinian rallies, they're pro-Hamas rallies. We got to know what it is. And most of the people that are there have no idea from the river to the sea. So the question is, how do we stop this anti-Semitism, this hatred, these people rallying? Is that your biggest challenge these days? Is there something else on the agenda that
I think that is the biggest challenge for all the diaspora right now. But when we talk especially about university life, it is the apathy, the stone cold silence, or worse, of university presidents, chancellors, other officials. That is a status quo we cannot accept. And I think moving forward, the biggest challenge of all, if we didn't learn anything else from October 7th, is that Jews need to unite. We know what our differences are, but we talk about these existential threats. If we unite, we'll beat them back. And if we don't, we're going to be in very, very tenuous territory.
I think the majority of Jews have been united regarding Israel, but you have a strong vocal minority. You have Jewish Voices for Peace. You have Neturei Karta, which has stepped up their game. I mean, I'm getting videos, and we've done some programming on it, that some of these Neturei Karta leaders, so-called leaders, are going to mosques and going to demonstrations and really riling up the crowds by saying Israel is terrorists and Holocaust, using that imagery, and really so anti-Israel. And they're getting loud applause. And I think they love it. And the more applause they get from the Palestinians and their supporters, the more they go into it and get more involved.
Yeah, well, some of these people, the ones who kissed Ahmadinejad and others in Iran, I don't think they're doing this just from the depths of their hashkafa. They're probably getting also financial remuneration. I saw the damage they did. I was the representative for the Jewish organizations in 2001 at the United Nations Conference on Racism in Durban, South Africa. They were the darlings of the international media. And by the way, their badges read they were officially part of the Hezbollah delegation.
The Hezbollah delegation.
The Hezbollah delegation, I think in some ways, you know, it's not just Neturei Karta, it's post-Neturei Karta, where we really need the help now from the Haredi leadership, is what they've said to us publicly and privately. They don't represent us. We need them to be more proactive and to indicate no more chasanas with you, no more connections with you. You're all in chayrim. They're quick to use chayrim within their own kehilas. Now what we really need them to do, their chelek, in part, is to make it clear to Klal Yisrael, first and foremost, that these people are michutz lamachana, they're outside of the Jewish people, and yes, unfortunately, they're doing tremendous damage, no question about it. But I think again, when we're talking about the diaspora, the galut, especially places like New York and LA and Chicago, you have so many different communities, nationalities, and represented from around the world. We need to step up our game in interacting with the local communities, find out what their needs are, and in addition to taking care of next Shabbos' phenomenal Kiddush, maybe there's a little bit more we also need to do for our neighbors next door. First of all, it's the right thing to do, and secondly, it will yield very positive results for our kids and grandchildren and theirs and their grandchildren.
I want to thank you for all that you do. Rabbi Abraham Cooper is the Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action Agenda for the Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles. Thank you for all that you're doing. Continued success in representing us. And we have so much more work to do, and we all have to be working together, as you correctly pointed out. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, Zev. And I want to know your secret of basically not aging at all.
Well, you listen. If you love what you're doing, same thing with you. I remember we had a great time on that Simon Wiesenthal Center cruise in Europe. How many years ago was that? That was
a few years.
Okay. Anyway, nice speaking. Continue. So we're going to have you back again. Thank you for joining us.
God bless. Be well.
Rabbi Abraham Cooper here on the Talk Line Network. Okay, we're out of time. Just a reminder.